Hey, this is Dr. Priyanka Venugopal, and you're listening to the Unstoppable Mom Brain Podcast: How to Talk to Your Kids About Bodies and Weight Loss. I have had this conversation so many times. I decided to just come on and throw on my mic because I feel so passionate and fired up about this topic that I just wanted to come and record a podcast episode specifically talking about our children and maybe the thoughts and feelings that they have about their bodies and how we as moms can really feel more empowered in having these conversations that sometimes feels delicate and maybe vulnerable. I have had this conversation so many times with my clients in the Unstoppable group and even with some of you on DM over on Instagram. And I know how important it is for us as moms to really feel like we have the tools to talk to our children about our bodies, about weight loss, and about their health in a way that doesn't create a lot of the drama that maybe we had when we were growing up. So I want you to settle in for this chit chat conversation where I am going to share with you some of my perspective, my opinion, and absolutely my experience in what I find to be the most powerful ways to have these conversations with our children, no matter what age, whether they're the tiniest little children, little toddlers, all the way through young adulthood, how we can start changing the conversation so we can bring a lot more power to these conversations. I hope you really enjoyed today's episode. So, before we get into this conversation around how to talk to our children about our bodies, about weight loss, and about health, I just want to start by saying that I value and know that your highest wisdom is listening to this podcast conversation, and your intuition is going to guide you right. How you talk to your children is something that you are going to get to decide. And my intention with this episode is really to break down some of the barriers that I see coming up for moms. Maybe you have fears about wording it just right. You want to say things and express ideas around health and body and weight gain or weight loss the right way. Maybe you don't want your kid to feel any body shame, no matter what their size is. You don't want to just not buy any snacks at home, but at the same time, you don't want your kids eating junk all day. You want to teach your kids healthy habits without villainizing food. Maybe you don't want them to see you on another diet. I think a lot of this comes down to us not wanting our children to deal with the destructive diet culture that we grew up with. And you might have even thought, I don't want them to deal with what I've had to deal with, and really unlearning so much of the embarrassment and the shame and the guilt that so many of us have had around our bodies. All of these things, I just shared a laundry list of the reasons that we might have some fear or hesitation, will drive us to not have these conversations openly. We will hesitate talking about bodies and weight loss and health and habits, or we'll talk around the topic. We won't talk very directly at it, or we'll make little side comments trying to talk about the topic without talking about the topic. You know what I mean? I get all of this, friends. I see your fear. I see your concern, and I see your hesitation. And I want you to know, number one, it is so incredibly normal because we're not taught as moms how to talk to our children about their bodies, about weight loss, about health in a way that is really free of shame and embarrassment and guilt because we were not taught this when we were growing up. So you and I together on this episode are navigating we're going into new waters. We're going to chart a new roadmap for how to have this conversation. And it really starts with you. So let me just start by saying that really this episode is a perspective that I want you to take everything that I share in my perspective, take it through the filter of your highest wisdom, through your family values, take it through the filter of the things that really are mattering to you as you have this conversation with your children about bodies and weight loss and health. I remember my client, Emily, shared on the podcast a little while ago how she remembered growing up seeing her mom counting calories. I mean, I think so many of us have grown up in a culture where maybe we have seen the big person in our life, often our mom or some woman, counting calories or really focusing on diet and having so much of a preoccupation with food and weight loss. I remember Emily saying, I do not want that for me. This is something I see time and time again with so many of my clients who are saying things like, hey, I just came back from my pediatrician, and according to my doctor, we need to be more mindful and watchful of my kid's weight. And my kid already has thoughts about their body. How do I have this conversation? There are so many reasons, either from our own childhood growing up, maybe we saw behavior in the big people in our life that we just hated, the counting of the points, the counting of the calories, the constant obsession with weight loss and diet culture. And also, we're now experiencing it as moms with our children from a real, true perspective of what health looks like for our young people. This is a real struggle because we have grown up in diet culture. We did grow up with seeing so many behaviors that we don't love, so many destructive patterns around counting every single point or calorie that we ever ate, having this obsessive feeling around weight loss and our bodies. And at the same time, we feel nervous about talking about health without turning it into a shame fest. But rather than hesitating in these conversations with our children, and rather than feeling fear and worrying about how am I supposed to talk about this and how am I supposed to emphasize health without villainizing food, I know you love your kids so much. And that's the exact reason that I want to invite all of us to lean into these conversations head on and really question and figure out where our fear has actually come from. That's really what I want to arm you with today on the podcast. Let's just start with the piece that is the fear. I don't want my kid to worry about this. I don't want my kid to have to think about this. I don't want my kid to have negative thoughts about their body. Here's the thing. Ultimately, I would say for most of us, I cannot say for all of us, but for most of us, as we grow, as our bodies change, especially going through puberty, it is so normal that we're going to have thoughts about our changing bodies. So it's not actually true that we don't want our kids to think about their bodies. What we really don't want is we don't want our kids to think negatively about their bodies. But before we can get into thinking about what our kids are going to think about their bodies and helping them not have negative thoughts about their bodies and health and their weight, we have to focus on what are we thinking about our health, our bodies, and our weight. What would it look like for you to think about your body and your goals and your health in this way? For example, I remember for so many years, this is when I really struggled the most with my weight, when I was on the roller coaster that was trending up. I used to think, oh, I hate how I look. I wish that I could just lose this weight easily. I wish that I was allowed to eat the Doritos and the pizza. This all sucks. This way of thinking feels terrible. And it really does perpetuate this negative obsession with weight loss in a way that doesn't feel good. It makes perfect sense that we don't want this type of thinking for our children. Yet this is what we are all doing all the time when it comes to us wanting to lose weight. And in some senses, and this might be a little bit of a trigger or a taboo topic, but I think in many ways it has contributed to the body positivity movement in a negative way. There was a time, and it might still be ongoing, where we started to think that thinking about losing weight and our bodies and wanting to feel a certain way in our skin was a negative thing. It felt indulgent, it felt obsessive. I mean, I'm thinking of all of these words that are really tainted with a negative connotation with weight loss. And from here, somehow this got equated to the body positivity movement. But I think what happened, unfortunately, is body positivity turned into really villainizing and ignoring body health. And this is part of the conversation, even that we're having today on this podcast. What if body positivity was learning how to drop shame and embarrassment and guilt from your thoughts about your body, and also dropping shame and guilt and embarrassment from your desire to lose weight and to feel a certain way in your body? I just think that sometimes we put on these labels of body positivity, but it actually ends up doing a lot of harm because then we start ignoring the actual needs of our body. And that is one of the missions that I have here, even in this episode, is how can we bring conversations about our body to the forefront with our children that feels truly objective and really loving? The reality is, it's not that we don't want our children or ourselves to not think about our bodies or weight loss or health. I want you to think about any goal worth having. Any goal that's worth having is going to demand that you think about it. If you want to ace a test or get a promotion or start a business, or if you want to rock that science project, you cannot avoid thinking about the goal. But what we can do is we can think about that goal, think about our process to achieve that goal through a different lens. It's like taking off a pair of crap glasses that we've had about our bodies and food and weight loss that's been smudged and cracked and everything feels really distorted, and putting on a pair of smudge-free crystal glasses where you can really see the objectiveness of the path ahead of you, of your goal, and the strategy that you want to employ to get there. So for me, I'm just going to share what it looks like for me and how I think about and feel about weight loss and my body and health is I want my body to be taken care of. I really want my body. Think of her as this one that I have for my whole entire life. And if I'm not taking care of her, I promise you, nobody else is. So I want my body to feel taken care of. I want my gut to really feel so good. I want to feel energized and focused and be able to run around and enjoy my life with and without food. I want to grow older in a way where I get to live my biggest, most fullest life and know that me taking care of my body right now is going to ensure that. Now, our kids may not get that level of perspective, right? Some of our kids are very young. That way of describing my relationship with my body might feel so deep. But while they are little and cannot understand that perspective, us as adults, as moms, can understand that perspective. When you think about your body in this way, when you think about weight loss in this way, when you think about and believe these thoughts about your goal through that crystal clear lens, you will talk about weight, health, and body from that lens. So it won't be so dramatic and you won't be tiptoeing around shame, embarrassment, and guilt. Why? Because you won't be feeling it. Let me give you a personal example. So my son hates candy, anything with artificial coloring. I mean, up until recently, he actually enjoyed all kinds of things, all kinds of ice creams and cupcakes and candy, but he learned from his cousin, and I have not verified this, but I have a feeling that it's true because usually when he goes down a research rabbit hole, he is often correct. Apparently, a lot of artificial dyes, or maybe all of them, come from beetle pee, like the urine of beetles. I'm laughing. I know this is kind of crazy. I'm going off on a tangent, but I want you to stick with me. Now, now when we go to the grocery store, because ever since he's learned this, he learned it, he cannot unsee it. And my son really fixates on details like this. Now, when we go to the grocery store, this kid has to check the labels of every single thing we buy, including dill pickles and olives. He'll show me the labels of brands that I have bought in the past. I'm talking about like regular pickles. And he'll see, there's yellow 5. Or if we'll go to something like, olives, maybe like purple olives, like, see, red 40, he'll just start like looking at the labels and the ingredients and he will boycott us getting any of these things. He has to check, is there red 40, yellow 5, blue 3? I don't know. There's like a whole variety of these artificial chemicals. And he'll even go on mini rants about how these ingredients are banned in other parts of the world and why is it not banned in the US? Now, I think it is incredibly adorable right now as I share the story. In the moment, it's quite frustrating because I just want to buy the dill pickles. But what is so fascinating is despite my son being so on this bandwagon of like no artificial ingredients, my daughter could care less. It's kind of hilarious because my son will try to educate my daughter. Like, did you know that that has red 40 in it? That has yellow 5? My daughter just does not even care, despite my son's best attempts to thwart her from buying candy. She still wants to enjoy a lollipop if she gets her hair cut, and she loves Lucky Charms for breakfast if I let her have it. So how do I talk to my daughter, who clearly loves candy and cupcakes and Lucky Charms, about these things? How do I talk to her about food and nutrition and the science of her body without it turning into a conversation that is full of shame and embarrassment and drama around how she eats? First of all, she's only 5.5 at the time of this episode, but I think that this is a conversation that we can start having at our youngest years, and it's never too late to start having. Here's how I talk to her about it. I tell her that our growing bodies love nutrients to grow our muscles, to give us energy, and it also makes a lot of sense that You love lollipops because they're so sweet, and yes, they can be so tasty. And we can totally have them every now and then. But our number one job is to care for ourselves and our growing bodies. And I give her examples. She loves to play soccer. So I talk to her about how her legs to run so fast need nutrients to support her muscles, and how she wants to kick the ball so hard, and her body needs nutrients to be able to do that. I talk to her about how our amazing body is simply asking for amazing food. And the way that I'm talking to her about exercise and running and playing and having fun and eating delicious things while having all these nutrients is like the Lego blocks to building her growing body. I want you to just feel the tone and texture with which I'm having this conversation. It is so playful, it is focused on real facts, it's focused on nutrition science without making it so heavy and boring for her. And I'll notice, like every once in a while, she might get on a kick of saying, I want lollipops or I want Lucky Charms. And it'll be like every day, I want Lucky Charms every single day. I will tell her the exact same thing. No drama, no worry, no concern, because I'm believing what I'm saying. I would say, I know it's really yummy, and we can totally have it on fill in the blank, like you're the day of the week that you might want to have Lucky Charms. But let's go and have fun with this other thing. And then we just move on. Let me tell you why this works. Number one, it is something that I have had to train in our family. So we didn't start this way. This is something that we have had to train on purpose. In the beginning, if you're not used to having conversations like this, your kid might have a tantrum. They might be so used to eating in a certain way that this conversation feels awkward for you or disconcerting for them. And that's totally okay. But to make this conversation have the most punch, especially with my daughter, is I have to believe what I'm saying. It's not just lip service. I truly live and breathe this. I am really believing that, yes, I want our bodies, our amazing one of a kind bodies, to get the best nutrients to operate in the best way possible. So when I do say no to her asking for Lucky Charms every day or lollipops all the time, it's not coming from a place of restriction, because I don't believe it's restricting to say no. If I believed that it was so restricting that I'm not allowed to eat pizza and lollipops and ice cream whenever I want, and oh, it sucks so much because we're not allowed, you tell me, how does that land with you? I would say for all of us ever thinking, I'm not allowed to eat this amazing food that I love so much, it feels crappy. It feels terrible. And while we as adults might have started to filter ourselves and shut that part of us down by using willpower, our children are incredibly smart and often unfiltered. They're going to fight it. And this is where the battle comes from. Rather than if I believe that my primary focus is to take care of my body while teaching myself to have fun at the same time, that might mean lollipops sometimes, but not all the time. It just isn't a problem to know that I'm taken care of. I get to have so much fun, and I'm taking care of this one body that I have. I get to have all kinds of delights. I mean, I can go on and on. The reason I can go on and on is because I have really taken my brain to the place of believing how much I want the goal of having a healthy and vital body for my whole entire life. How does that land? In my experience, when we are really able to see the power of our thoughts and our beliefs around our bodies, around our health, around weight loss, we get to translate that thought and belief into the energetics of our words. And this is something that I think we kind of overlook a lot. We forget to give our body the significance that she deserves. Now, I will tell you, it's not that we never eat lollipops and candy and pizza in my house. My kids are actually eating pizza often. A lot of the time, I will throw pasta into a pot, boil it, and give it to them if they'll eat it. My son will not, because he'll claim that there's red 40 in the spaghetti sauce. But my kids will eat pizza. And I want to tell you, how do I navigate those conversations where I'm not eating the exact same foods as my kids? For example, if my daughter's having goldfish snack crackers for her snack, I'm not also eating goldfish snack crackers. I want to tell you how I navigate this conversation. Pizza is a great example where my kids are having pizza Friday night with the movie. I will 99% of the time have cauliflower crust pizza, or when I can kind of get the energy to make broccoli crust pizza, it's even better. And I do this legitimately, not because I'm not allowed to eat like the pizza that they are eating. It's legit because my body feels 10x. I'm not even exaggerating. My body feels 10x better when I eat cauliflower crust or broccoli crust pizza. Now, I don't say to them, I'm not allowed to eat that pizza. I'm trying to lose weight. I'm trying to maintain my weight loss results. I'm not allowed to eat that pizza. I don't ever say that to them. First of all, they barely notice what's beyond their plate. But when they do, sometimes my son might ask, especially when I first started doing this, where I would eat cauliflower crust when they're eating regular pizza. He would ask, Mommy, how come you're having something different than what we're having? Like, how come you're not having this pizza? And I told him the truth. I didn't hide from it. I didn't mince words. I didn't say fake allergies. I didn't come up with lies to avoid the conversation. I leaned into the truth. I said that my body actually feels so much better when I eat cauliflower crust compared to regular crust. And our bodies are different. So maybe his body feels okay with eating that pizza. And then I offer him, hey, do you want to try my cauliflower crust pizza? You're welcome to try it. The conversation ends up being a non-drama, non-issue filled 2-minute conversation that has helped my kids see that I have no drama about food. I have no drama about making tweaks to the way that I'm eating compared to them. And also, it opens up conversation. They get to ask me about what I'm eating and why I'm eating it, and why maybe I'm not eating something that they're eating. Maybe this is the OBGYN in me, but I am really big on teaching kids the real thing, the real deal, the science of things, telling them their real body parts without shame. And I think a lot of this is because I don't want them to associate any part of our conversation, especially when it comes to our bodies, as it comes to our health, even weight loss, to be associated with shame or embarrassment. I think that shame really likes to hide. And when that happens, we end up not talking. And what I prefer, what the whole intention of this podcast episode, where I'm sharing my perspective on this, is what it would feel like for all of us to really let the shame go, let the embarrassment go, and just lean into honest conversation. And this includes body parts. Now, this is weird. This might be weird for you. This was weird for me as well, because growing up, we didn't talk much about our bodies at all. We didn't label body parts, number one. We did not really talk much about puberty or sex or changing bodies. But what I do remember learning is just that there was a quote unquote right amount of weight to be. I had this idea of like a 1990s model, maybe in my mind. I don't even know where I got that from, maybe from some movies or maybe from watching a Bollywood film about what a typical beautiful woman looked like. And this is the only introduction, the only thoughts that I had in my mind was just what I picked up from the media. I think that this is why it's so important that we start to become the gateway for our kids. But to do that, we have to go first. So, this whole part of the podcast conversation was really to help us explore where our fear has come from, where our embarrassment and our shame has come from. A lot of it has come from diet culture, but really asking yourself the question of what would it look like to talk more objectively about health in a way where we really do prioritize our body, where we teach our children about what it means to take care of our bodies with a variety of nutrients without villainizing food. The second piece of today's podcast conversation is how I have started to embark on the conversation. And I invite all of you to embark on the conversation when your kid says or thinks something negative about themselves. Maybe your kid says, I hate how I look. Or maybe they went to the pediatrician and the pediatrician says something like, we need to really watch the weight. And now all of a sudden your child has so many thoughts about their weight. Now, it makes a lot of sense that our knee-jerk response as their moms, because we love them so much and we don't want them to feel anything negative about their body, is, no, 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 you're beautiful. Don't worry. They say, I hate how I look. And you're like, no, 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 you're beautiful. Here's the thing. Before we leap to how beautiful they are, I think it is so important to take a pause and to really meet them and see them and hear them where they actually are without fear and drama for you. This is going to have to come from such a place of love and patience and tenderness where we can really see them and hear them and what they're experiencing. So if they say, oh, I hate how I look, or they have a thought about their body, before we leap to how beautiful we think they are, or say, no, 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 don't hate how you look. I want you to imagine what it would feel like to say, oh, I see how much you're hurting. I see you. Just taking that pause and acknowledging what they're thinking and feeling is not permissive. It's not a permission slip for your kid to say hateful things about themselves. In my experience, pausing and really sitting in that moment, seeing what your kid is saying and feeling and validating it, recognizing it, is just creating connection and trust. Maybe they start to think, oh, my mom is going to hear me and see me. And then what ends up happening is it creates a space for asking questions. When we feel like we have to brush something under the rug or cheerleader our kids to feel better right away, we end up really closing off the ability to ask questions. We shut down, we don't talk, we hesitate, we tiptoe around the real conversation rather than diving into it. Imagine instead that we started with connection and really validating. I see you. I get it. This must really feel really, really terrible. I understand. And then we got to curiosity. Why do you think that? Right? Can you imagine your kid says, I hate how I look. I hate this. And we were able to tap into connection and just pause and ask, why? Why do you think that? Tell me more. What I have experienced, and this is just with coaching adults and coaching, high achieving professionals, is when we start to do that work of asking questions, why we are thinking a certain way, why we are believing something, we start to access a lot more about where thoughts and beliefs have come from. Sometimes, and I know because I still do this to this day, I put my fears on my kids. I worry, I don't want them to feel this way because I used to feel that way. Or I don't want them to struggle with this issue because I struggled with that issue and I don't want them to struggle with it. But I think it's so important that we start to separate the feelings that we have about something from putting it onto our kids because it's not their job to solve our emotional challenges. The third piece of what I want to say, and I am so guilty of this. I'm still do this to this day, but I think it's really valuable to bring into this podcast episode to really fill it out. Is I recommend that we stop using food as reward and punishment. Really separate the two. Enjoy your lollipop, not because your kid got an A on a test. Just enjoy the lollipop to enjoy the lollipop. They did this study, which was fascinating, where they took a group of children who loved to draw on their own, intrinsically just enjoyed drawing, loved it so much. And then they attached reward. And over time, what they found was that the kids overall started hyper focusing on the reward, like the trophy that they were going to get, and their natural desire and enjoyment in the drawing went down. What's so fascinating when we attach reward like a food, lollipop, pizza, ice cream to good behavior is we're not necessarily tapping into intrinsic motivation to cultivate good habits. What if instead of attaching reward to behavior, and listen, as a mom, I know that it's really effective, it works really well to really reward your kid and get them to do what you want them to do. I totally get it. And also, I want you to think about the long term impact of that. At least with my kids, what I have found when I've attached reward to behavior is I keep having to up the ante. After a while, the reward that I started with is not enough for them. Here's an example. If you brush your teeth every day this week, you're going to get $1 at the end of the week. This might really work, right? Your kid's really motivated to get the dollar. They're going to go brush their teeth every single day. But I want you to think about what it might also be like if you really want your kids to cultivate the behavior and the process on their own, what it would be like to tap into intrinsic motivation rather than external reward. That would look like, listen, you're going to get $1 every single week, no matter what. That's just going to be your allowance. It's not attached to anything. But let's talk about brushing your teeth. When you brush your teeth every single day, not only do your teeth feel so smooth and so healthy, your gums won't develop disease. Your mouth is going to feel so fresh, it's going to feel so good, and our teeth are going to be so much happier. Getting our children to buy into the process is going to tap into intrinsic reward for them, which means they will start to go to brush their teeth on their own, not because of the dollar waiting for them at the end of the week, which is externally what you're giving them, but because for them, they have bought in. Oh, I really want to have this fresh mouth. I really want to have smooth teeth. I really want to have healthy gums. My mouth really wants to be happy. This is something, again, I want us all to take this with a little bit of nuance because, again, it depends on how old your children are. This is going to be a practice that doesn't happen overnight, but it's something that I think is so valuable for all of us, adults and children, for us to tap into intrinsic reward, for us to lean into really loving why we are doing what we're doing. I think it can be such an interesting practice. And again, take this with a grain of salt. I still use the ice cream to reward like a fun week for my children. It's not that I'm never, ever, ever doing it, but it's just something that I think we overutilize as moms because I know that it works in the short run, especially when you're struggling. You have a lot of kids, you have a lot of responsibilities, rewards do work. But I want to encourage all of us to really lean into teaching our children about why the process matters. Take the three parts that I shared on today's podcast episode really through the filter of your highest wisdom as a mom and through whatever feels age appropriate for your children. You know what's going to make sense for your family. Bring your pediatrician into the conversation for guidance and support, and really understand that the intention of today's podcast conversation is just to bring to light if we feel fear and shame and embarrassment talking about bodies, about weight loss, about health, then it makes a lot of sense that we are trying to avoid that experience for our children. But that is also driving us to hesitate and hold back in open, loving conversations where our children get bought into the process. I want you to remember as moms, we are often the gateway for what is coming into the home, for how our children are going to think about food, how they're going to think about their bodies and their weight. So, what if we went first? You have to know how to drop fear from talking about health, body, weight loss, and nutrition in a practical, drama free way that literally has zero shame and zero guilt around it. And this is going to require an unlearning because we all grew up with diet culture. We've all grown up with this really toxic way of thinking about weight loss that I think is so essential that we unlearn and really pass on to our children. And also, we want to protect our children who are likely going to be exposed to much of the same as they grow up in this culture. In my opinion, talking about our bodies should be encouraged, open, and honest, led by science and real facts about nutrition and our bodies without villainizing food. This will take the drama and the guesswork out of the conversation. I really love that we are having these conversations with my clients in the Unstoppable group because I know that as women, we really are the gateway for these narratives that we get to have in our families. And when we do this, when we really drop the embarrassment, the shame, the fear, the guilt from food, and we are able to normalize talking about health and our bodies and weight loss in a way that is truly productive, that serves us for a lifetime, we get to pass that on to the next generation. Our kids don't have to grow up with shame, guilt, and embarrassment about their bodies. It's normal as they're growing and as they're changing, they're going to have a lot of thoughts, a lot of awkwardness, because that's just a normal part of growing up. But what if we allowed ourselves and taught them that there's a difference between the awkward experience of puberty and having negative thoughts about yourself from this lingering shame, guilt, and fear that we have about health and food? It's normal and also so tricky to navigate sometimes, which was the intention of today's podcast episode. And really, it is so incredibly powerful to have a coach in your corner helping you navigate these unique scenarios for you and for your family. I really love what I do. I hope that you all love this podcast conversation. It's been on my mind. It's a conversation I've been having so much with my friends and my clients alike. And I wanted it to drip into this podcast because I know that as moms, this is something you care about. You care about how to talk about health and healthy habits with science without the shame and the guilt and the embarrassment for our children. And I really want that for you. It gets to start with us first, and then we get to drip it into our families. I hope you guys have an amazing week. Bye.